Have you ever joined a game in Call of War, thinking you will win this match? But all of the sudden you have this big boy just standing next to your capital. That ain't no good for a person like you, and you probably got a rage quit. Here are my tips on defending your homeland. Most people build their fortifications on the border of their potential adversaries. That's very wrong. Instead, try to build your fortresses just a little far away from the border, as because your enemy will probably scout to see if their border is clear of any obstacles, which isn't. So there could be two scenarios that are bad. If your fortifications are level 1 or 2, then the scouts can see your units and knows how to deal with it. If they are level 3, it can hide the units stationed in your border. But if the scout cars are pretty high on level, they can tell that it's units that you stationed to defend. But if they are not, there still could be a chance where the player notices that their buildings built by his enemy all along your border, and the most likely it could be fortifications, which there could be different responses to this measures. One, the enemy will try to find the weakest point of your defense and push through there, or do some other thing like yeah, you do not want this to happen. A 1v3 is probably possible, but not when you have 3 long fronts and a short army. Can you spot 3 mistakes I made? Did you find them? Good job if you did. The 3 mistakes were: 1. I didn't rally up my armies but just charged at them instead. 2. I didn't retreat at all, which just makes me lose all my units. 3. I didn't use the "you take my land, then I take your land" tactic. This tactic is basically something like this. Instead of you defending your lands, why not attack them in their own territory? Because most of the time, enemy armies are focused where the flags are. So just going around them will catch them off guard and leave. You end him in danger rather than you're just being in danger. But this strategy has things that requires to work. 1. You gotta make sure the enemy doesn't have air force. 2. You need a neutral or allied country that's bordering your enemy. And that's just it. Okay, next tip.
Oh my God!
Ever wondered how to split up enemy armies? Well, divide and conquer is your answer. Think of it like facing a complex problem, or in this example, a huge army. Instead of trying to solve the entire problem at once, you break it down into smaller, more manageable parts. Now you can deal with them more easily, rather than taking on the whole thing in one go. Now the question is, how do you divide them? There's many ways you could do this. One can include paratroopers, where you strike behind enemy lines, causing them to split their forces and go attack them. Or you can retreat your forces, making the enemy think that you have no army, so he will try to rush your country by splitting his army, therefore making it easier for your army to deal with. But keep in mind, once you attack, you retreat to avoid retaliation. Okay, next tip. This is the newspaper. This is your best friend in your game. Your only friend. This friend is the best source of intelligence, just behind spies. Now, I never use the newspaper as much, but wow, I can gather so much information about other players. Like in a game I'm playing, I can tell Finland is a tank spammer and probably using aircraft. 2. And I can exploit that weakness by producing interceptors and anti-tank personnel. The newspaper also gives me an idea on how much active and what time when he is active. And as you can tell, this guy isn't that active and really doesn't care, and is mainly online when I'm sleeping. By this information, I now know more about the enemy. It also helps that the newspaper provides me with the latest battles happening, and I can make a little map of location of Finland's army. This is all the last known places of his army. The jets are there to represent the aircraft. I also put a reference on the top right side just in case. If you get confused with the borders, If you are wondering how did I made this, I used the app Tactical Maps for this. Go check it out, pretty good app for planning in cow. Okay, next tip. Here is a map showing all the vegetation and mountains of the world. And this is probably the most closest map to a world at war map. Now this tip is about terrain. Terrain can decide the fate of your country, whether you use it to win or lose to someone else using it. Let's take Tibet for example. Their mountains acts like a natural barrier. I did play a recent game and I found that most of the mountains are in south, and mostly hills on the north. This means there's people trying to advance from the south, meaning the only way they would probably come from the north, which gives you a slight idea where to defend. Terrain does not only provide defensive capabilities, but others too. Like you can produce units which are ideal to the terrain, like militia and artillery, which is a good early starting units. And both of them get a bonus in strength, and that bonus would be very good, as most of Tibet's surroundings are mountains or forests. Tibet isn't the only good country in its geographical position. Island countries can be good too, like Japan or United Kingdom. There's many countries with good geography, so the next time you join a game, make sure it's actually in a good position. Okay, my time is up. I'll see you in eternity.
出现违规异常，了解详情请按0，由华语客服为您服务。